Alright, so Marks, this little video, which hopefully will be about 10 minutes, is super important, and to give a kind of bird's eye view as to what's happening around St. Mark's, but also why what's happening is happening, so that as you understand that and as we understand that together, we might be able to experience the richness and the depth of St. Mark's to a greater extent. And the diary will make sense, and everything that happens will make sense because we'll understand the method behind the madness. So about 14 months ago, way premature because we all thought we'd beaten COVID about 14 months ago, and it turns out we didn't, I unleashed this model into the world. This was a diagram, an easy way of understanding the four little spheres, the areas that I think our feet need to each be planted if we're going to grow as a disciple. And so this term and going forward around St. Mark's, we're structuring everything to fit into this diagram, this mode, this model, in order that, not that we follow some program, but in order that we grow as disciples. That's the entire ball game. That we each experience this invitation from Jesus to follow him, to be, as John Mark Comer would call it, an apprentice of the Master, to learn the ways and the rhythms of Jesus, to experience the depth of peace and joy that only Jesus can bring, to experience a relationship with God that lasts through a day of trial. I don't know, like a global pandemic. That would enable our faith, even when it's shaken, even when some renovation needs to occur, even when we ditch some old answers and we need to discover new ones, even when we're thrown a complete curveball and we're not sure what to do. To build a kind of faith, a closeness to the Master, a kind of discipleship which not only is it fulfilling and profound, but it's sustaining. It sustains us and it carries on going, and it's capable of some shaking and some sifting, but it's strong enough and valuable enough to outlast all of those things. That's the whole ballgame, to be disciples of Jesus. That's what I hope is built around St. Mark's, not a church, not an organisation, not a charity. All those things are great and they might be around, but that we each grow as disciples of Jesus. So the four spheres are really quickly, and I'll teach kind of maybe a little bit more over the term into each one of those. If you want to stand up, you have to have a strong core. That's the root of everything. We have to have a strength of core, and that's the same as being a disciple. This, in this model, is the work that goes on that's solely between you and God. This is the stuff that's outside of the reach and influence of me or anybody else. This is the moment where we as individual disciples take responsibility for saying, I'm going to grow in my understanding of God, the character of God, the ways of God, the words of God, and I'm going to work in such a way that I take on those characteristics, that I have a closeness and a nearness and a proximity to God. I'm not going to live out my life or my faith vicariously through somebody else. It might be great that Paul at the front of church or somebody else at the front of church is doing this stuff, but that's not enough. That's not nearly good enough. That's of way secondary importance. What's most important is that I have, you have, we each have a core, a strong core, a developed core, a relationship with Christ that we're working on. There's a whole bunch of ways of doing that. There's Bible reading and Bible study, there's prayer, there's just getting outside and observing nature and feeling peace overwhelm you. There's looking at the stars, there's singing, there's poetry, there's dance, there's joy, there's laughter, there's table time. Whatever it, podcast, whatever it is, and there's a million different ways of feeding your soul and investing in your core. That's key. You can't grow as a disciple without it. That's sometimes boring, it's sometimes dull, and it feels sometimes fruitless. It's just sustained. Getting into a rhythm, getting into a ritual, a practice, a habit. That's part of it, and we'll be investing in resources for that and helping to structure that, because sometimes that feels like a lonely walk. The next kind of sphere out where our feet need to be planted each time is what we call a car share. A car share is a mentality whereby we understand that we are traveling through life with people and we don't want to do it accidentally. We want to do it deliberately. We want to have people and relationships around us which are formed by, which are recognized for having vulnerability and honesty to them, that have a deep sense of connection, that we don't just talk about whether Strictly's coming up or whether we prefer apples or pears. We talk about deeper stuff, and we share deeper stuff, and we encourage each other, and we commit to the long haul of the journey with one another. There's a video that's all about that in greater detail, so I won't say anything more about that. But that's part of it. Otherwise, you're just a nun or just a monk in a room reading the Bible by yourself. You have to embrace the fact that other people and doing this journey communally is important. The next level out is the village. That's what we think of as when we gather, when all of the disciples gather together and they eat together and they feast together and they play frisbee and toast marshmallows together. Sometimes they have incredibly joy-filled moments together. Sometimes it's moments of grief and mourning together. But it's what the village does when it gathers, when it communes. It has a life that is obviously different to, and in some ways has more possibilities to it than just the life of me on my own as an individual. There are resources, there is an energy, there is a momentum that a village has. There are moments that a village can create together. There's the experience of when I'm in my room on my own reading the Bible, it feels like it's just me looking at the ceiling sometimes. But when I come to the village and I experience the joy of being encouraged by others and mentored by others and taught by others, and being able to do that to others as well as just passing coffee around, then that's the joy of the village. And that village is able to do way more than I'm able to do on my own. And being part of that village is core to who we are. It's why we've always had tables, not rows, because we believe that it's never supposed to be just an individual sport. This is something that's a team activity, that there is always more wisdom in the room than just in any individual one of us, that there is always more that somebody else can colour in for us. And so we want to do it as a village. And then the final layer out there is the arena. This is where your faith becomes active, where it moves from just head knowledge of learning about and spending time with on my own. It just moves from a group of people that maybe think similarly to me to being active and understanding that when I spend time with Jesus in that kind of core time, that the Lord is going to whisper stuff to me, that maybe he might ask that I become a better dad or a more patient friend or a kinder, more compassionate person in general. And that there would be an active working out of my faith in an arena. That arena might be my head and my emotions. It might be my family context. It might be the street and your literal neighbours. It might mean serving the city at large. It might mean whatever it is for you. So those are the 4 areas, all of which drive towards becoming a more mature disciple of Jesus. Now here's the key that reflects how we practice and how we are as St. Mark's. What I don't want to do is say, hey, there's a great model, everybody get involved in all 4 areas. By the way, each one of us will have one of those areas which seems more natural and one of those areas which seems more alien and harder work, but all 4 are important. I don't want to just say, there's a great model, get after that. In the meantime, whenever we gather together as village, let's just carry on doing what we've always done. And so, some of the things that we've always experienced will stay the same. There'll always be tea and coffee, there'll always be food, there'll always be fun, there'll always be joy. But this term, we're going to chase even harder after time as a village spent filling the relational bucket, because we've missed each other over the last 18 months. It isn't the same on Zoom. You all know that. And so there is purposefully Sundays or weekend gatherings when it's just at the park, where it's just a walk, where it's just eating breakfast together in IKEA. As if that was secondary, but anyway, it's not. Because building that village and having that as a strong relational place where you feel known and are able to know others, that's vital to building a faith that sustains. So get involved in the village as much as you can. There will be some times when we've created space in your diary as a gift to spend time on your core. There's nothing happening on a couple of Sundays over this term, deliberately, so that you can rest and Sabbath and enjoy peace and slow down and play. If you want to be reminded of some of the teaching that we did on that, then you can track back on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to that, by the way, so that you can remember some of the things we talked about as how to build a Sabbath rhythm. It might be that you do it with other people. It might be that you choose to invest in your core just by yourself on a Sunday and carve out time and help others in your circle to be able to do that too. There are some times when we're going to meet on a Saturday and we're going to have a meal together, and over a simple meal we'll share the story of our faith, we'll encourage one another, we'll open up the mic, we'll rehearse what is important to us and pull each other back to eyes fixed on Jesus, because sometimes my eyes wander and the vision leaks and all of that. And then we'll have this beautiful, brilliant meal where everybody's included, and then there's a Sunday free for you to Sabbath, for you to rest, for you to enjoy, for you to, I don't know, jump out of a plane with a parachute on your back. The teaching, make sure you've got a parachute. The teaching, as it were, is this term largely going to be done on YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. This term we're going to go through a series of conversation starters based around this idea that we are all being formed by 1,000 different things all the time, by our politics, by our culture, by our skin colour, by our phones, by our ambition, by our money, or lack of each of these things. We're being formed all the time. So to take a moment and stop and pause and think, am I being formed into a person that I like, never mind anybody else? Am I being formed in a way which I'm proud of, that I'm happy with? Would Jesus offer a different way of formation into my character, into my being at any point? And then grasping to the opportunity to understand that we are also formers of the things around us. How are we forming the world around us? Those are designed, the YouTube clips, all this term, to be conversation starters that you can take into a car share conversation, that you can talk about over coffee with somebody else. Understanding that teaching is often monologue delivery. Learning happens when we're around a table, when we're walking through the park together and using that car share mentality of discussing deeply with one another. This is what I think. Hey, here's something that I've thought of. Can I offer it into the mix for you? So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and each week there'll be a different thing. Sometimes from me, hopefully even more and more from others of us, that will say, hey, this is how I'm being formed. I wonder if that's in line with the God that I want to follow, or whether I've accidentally been formed in a different way. That is this autumn's term card, and the dates determine so much of our destination. We've talked about this before, where it doesn't matter where you intend to go, you have to build structure. If you want to go to London on the M1 from here, you've got to head south. No matter how hard you intend to go there, if you head north, doesn't matter. It's the same with our term card, with our diary. Because remember, a diary is a holy document. It doesn't matter how much we intend to grow as disciples. If we don't invest in our core, if we don't choose to build relationships of honesty and vulnerability and trust with other people, then we won't be traveling with anybody. If we don't invest in the village and sometimes turn up when it's on Zoom and we don't enjoy Zoom, and sometimes turn up when it's in person and walking into a room is a big deal for us, and sometimes we'll have to listen to others and their opinions, and sometimes we'll have to wash up together, understanding that all of those things are vital to the building of formation of discipleship, and that all of us will grow, some of us more hesitantly than others, in an active involvement in our faith. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, use the videos. Some of them will feel more pertinent to you, some will just wash over you. That's okay. They're designed to start conversations, because holy conversations feed into that formation of us and make sure it's done around a table rather than just monologue delivery. Grab a term card or check it out online. There's a whole bunch of things. There's breakfast clubs and curry clubs. There's youth hangouts. There's kids milkshakes. They're not bolt-ons. They're super important to be able to build up relationship with one another. There are times when we're together as a village and we'll be all in because we don't have the capacity or maybe the desire to just separate each other off into different groups all the time. We want to be together and to model our faith to the younger groups, and for them to model joy and trust and childlikeness to us. We, as always, will be floating around a whole bunch of different venues, but we're okay with that because we don't care about the bricks, we care about the people, and wherever we are, we know that Jesus is present too by his Spirit. And so that if we come together, committing to one another, committing to following Christ, committing to growing in maturity as disciples, and having fun as we go, then I think it will be a good term. That's a helicopter view from way above. There'll be more in-depth stuff on each of those areas. There already is on Core and Car Share on the website or on the YouTube channel. Check them out. otherwise, super excited about building something different this year, being able to embrace some of the changes and the shake-up of priorities that have been thrown at us over the last couple of months, understanding too the various speeds that each of us are going at, and knowing that actually we love each other, we like each other, we want to do this together, we want to follow wherever Jesus leads. Hope that makes sense. Big blessings, everybody.